Hello? Hi. Hang on, let me put you on speaker. Okay, let me make sure this is all plugged in. Okay, I think we might be on. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm going to try redialing you. I think this is a better connection. I think that we are on live already. I did the computer a little earlier. Let me click the speaker thingy.
All right.
Okay, try talking.
I'm talking now.
Okay, let me see. Okay, it's going into the microphone. I think we're good.
Okay.
So, welcome to office hours, everybody. Um, the topic today came up earlier, and I'm going to let our caller, who is a professional stockman and working equitation trainer, um, describe what the topic is because he brought it up, and I think it's a very important one and historical.
Well, I've seen this bullet point page called Xenophon's Training Principles. And I'm just sort of learning about Xenophon myself by actually reading at least this translation, The Art of Horsemanship, which is from Xenophon Press. And supposed quotes that are bullet pointed come from, it says, extract from Xenophon Reichkunst from Dr. Phil Klaus Widra, published in 2007. And when I looked that up, there's several translations all throughout time of Xenophon's work, and some of them even come under a different title.
Yes.
So without further research, it's hard to say, but basically these bullet points read, I mean, I've read enough of Xenophon, and I've got this book, The Art of Horsemanship, right in front of me, that even with the English translation, the verbiage, the sentence structure and everything is totally different than what's written here.
Yes. Yes.
The body of the information is fine enough, and I can read it to you. And some of it is basically what Xenophon said, but this I've noticed for years that people often quote Xenophon. They love to quote Xenophon and hold him to the highest esteem of horsemanship, and they know, the more I read, I realize they know next to nothing about him and that
Yes.
time in history.
That's my experience also.
Yeah, and they endow him with qualities that might be fairly modern.
Well, they're very new age and sort of snobby and elitist, I think. The quality.
Well, I did come off something like the first bullet point says, your horse is a reliable friend, trusted companion, not your slave. Well, he basically said that somewhere. However, many of those quotes he gives Simon, a fellow named Simon, credit for, which was actually his
trainer.
Maker.
Yeah, his maker. He sent all his young stock to Simon.
And the next bullet point, because I found a reference to this, and I'll show you what I'm having trouble with. It says, dedicate as much attention to his training as you would your own son. Okay, it goes on to say some other things. Now, oh, here's the chapter 2. He talks about, and I'm paraphrasing that he doesn't get into the method of breaking a colt, because that's basically for young men, and older men have more military concerns on their mind. And he says it's better than being a horse breaker for a young man to see that his own condition and that of his horse is good.
Yes.
Or if he knows this already, to keep up his practice in riding, while an old man had better attend to his family and friends, the public business and military matters, than be spending his time in horse breaking. But then he goes on, and this is where this quote may have come from, in a different translation. He says, the man then feels as I do about horse breaking, will of course put out his colt. Meaning, put out means sending him out.
Send it to.
You should not put him out, however, without having a written contract made stating what this horse is to be taught, and before he is returned, just as he does when he puts his son out to learn a trade.
Why don't they put that online?
Well, this is
what good advice.
Why, unless this is from this German fellow, a new translation.
Wait, did
because he says, this says dedicate as much attention to his training as you would your own son. But that's a far cry from what I just read.
Correct. Yes. Why don't the bullet point people that want to turn a Spartan general into an effete, pretentious, snobby person, why don't they put the part about get a written contract from the cowboy you send your horse to?
Well, of course we do. Then there's another one further down. Don't bore your horse. Vary the work and offer him different stimuli. Don't only ride him in the menage, but hack him out, go jumping or hunting. Those phrases are all modern phrases.
Yeah, and it's not the way that it's not the way Xenophon said it. No.
As the words of Xenophon, when they're the words of a modern trainer. Not that they're bad words or thoughts.
But why is he attributing them to Xenophon?
Well, of course, at the bottom it says contact taken from Oliveira to Oliveira by Manuel Jorge de Oliveira, and who is a trainer who considers himself a Boucherist, basically, and I guess a fan of Nuno Oliveira. I don't think he's related, but it sounds like his words and not Xenophon, which kind of is driving me crazy.
Me too. I understand. I felt that way. I don't know if you know that. You probably couldn't know this. The crushes of celebrities in my life basically range from Batman to Xenophon. Xenophon is one of the major crushes of my life. I love Xenophon. And he was not, he was an extremely fascinating, practical man. And the snobby dilettantes, I think, like to highlight his Athenian Socratic education and what an intellectual he was. But the guy got tossed out of Athens. He literally got banished from his own city state. And it was the Spartans who hired him to be the chief of their cavalry. And he then he became more Spartan than a Spartan-born Spartan, because he paid such close attention to how they did things, and very objectively, since he was an outsider, and literally became the Spartan of all Spartans. So, what the Spartans, if there was a youngster or a person or a weak child born that was talking about this foolish things that they are attributing to him, they would just put it on the side of a mountain and let it die in the cold. These were now they loved their horses, and even though they were very practical and strict with what they allowed and what they did not allow because of what would work, They were very, very good and wonderful with their troopers, their horses, their hunting and military dogs. And one of what Xenophon's main point, because I know what he I know what his governing idea about everything he did is equip whoever, whoever's working for you, whether it's a soldier or a dog or a horse, equip them out with the best possible training information and equipment, everything they could ever need, and training, and that they're able to do whatever they need to do, and then free rein, leave them to do it. Now that is a good horse training policy, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
But we don't hear that in the media, do we?
They don't make a lot of use of his military application, and
but his horses were for.
Like you said earlier, they sort of turn him into this classical dilettante who's riding so gracefully and lovely in an inside.
His horses were for military use, and when he wasn't in a war, he was hunting with them.
Yeah. I looked into that book you mentioned, Anabasis.
Yes. Oh, you'll love it. You will love it.
And that describes, I think that's the era you're talking about, where he was kicked out of Athens, or he lost a battle and had to take all those Greeks. Maybe that was before he was far back to the coast of the world, and it's a terrible ordeal.
Yeah, he got scapegoated, basically.
Quite a guy, and he wouldn't fit in. That's the thing, is I think he would be vilified today by these same people.
If he was on a Facebook group, if he was on a dressage Facebook group, they would kick him out.
Yeah, but this guy is usually, I don't know why. I think it's basically from Xenophon, but he's rephrased it in his own language, I guess, to make it palatable. But I'm barely an amateur historian, but the historian in me is really bothered by this guy.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm very glad to hear it. No, because Xenophon is worth. Everyone really should read Xenophon, because he said stuff like, nobody should be worried if you need to grab mane. That's a statement from him. What a great statement.
Well, the other thing about the book is there's actually very little on actual horse training.
Right.
It's about the management of horses and choosing a good horse and not getting robbed in a horse sale.
Yep.
It's very short, and all the especially the quote about nothing by force, the famous quote that everybody uses. That was, and he gives credit. That wasn't him. That was Simon, his horse breaker.
Yep.
So his horse breaker was. I don't know if he went to war or anything, but Simon was probably the guy to listen to, and evidently he wrote stuff, but there's very little that's ever been found of his writing.
Yeah, he was probably too busy with the horses. That would be the book to get, right? Would be Simon's. I wonder if that could be ever found, or if it's a very interesting idea. There's so much that when the background and history that we do know gets digested clearly for what it actually says, I find it far more interesting than the watered down version.
Oh yeah, it's real kind of gritty stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he does describe, for instance, just simply mounting a horse, mm-hmm. and things that most of the military manuals all sort of describe. The very basic, how to. He's just talking about bareback, I think, here. How to
Probably.
jump up on the back of a horse.
Yeah, he talks how to make their feet tough, to put them in a gravel stall.
Yeah. There's a lot of horse fair stuff. Yep. So
I'm remembering stuff.
There's another thing about this bullet point thing, that same, where it says, dedicate as much attention to his training as you would your own son. be aware that both body and soul of your horse should be trained meticulously. The forming of his character should be of the utmost importance. It should be distinguished through reliability and performance.
He's talking about Spartan training there. He's not talking about poo-poo head dressage training.
Well, this bullet point, this is not what I'm saying is Xenophon.
Right, I know, but that's why it's so flawed.
Well, then the last sentence is, imprint it from the first day of its life so that he deeply respects, trusts, and obeys you. There was no imprint. That's another modern psychological behaviorist term, imprinted.
Yeah, the imprinting of a Spartan was throw the baby out and see if it lives in the cold.
Well, I don't.
They didn't do that to the foals. They did not do that to the horses.
Talking about making a horse your friend, but this is all so, like you say, watered down. But
well, I think it's a very. I understand your chagrin, and I have been bothered by this for a really long time. Not only about Xenophon, but I love Xenophon. I feel like he's like, I don't know. I told you I have a huge crush on Xenophon. So I get almost personally offended when people try to make him like this effete urban guy.
Yeah.
And but I think this is an overall issue in the horse world today, exacerbated by the online horse world. Do you think that's a topic worth addressing? Like, what could be done?
Well, it's bad enough that they're taking historical figures and misquoting them for their own benefit. But the other thing is this is all about, and I know many horse, there seems to be more women doing it than men. You know, your famous 26-year-olds that have, they need the followers. It's like
it's for the followers.
YouTube followers, and so they have to keep producing content.
Yep.
To get the fun, they're actually monetizing it, and they're making money doing it.
Yes.
And so it's a real capitalistic adventure. So they have to keep spewing out what ends up being nonsense, or I hate to name, since people might be listening, I don't want to name names, but there's several of them out there that otherwise they'd probably be decent writers.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think that.
But maybe not. But
no, because if they were decent riders and it's somewhere in Xenophon, they would concentrate on ride your horse forward and make it straight. They would have a very practical underpinning of their whole message, and they don't.
Yeah, and it's sort of also conflated with, that's the right word.
Yeah, I think so. Convoluted.
Mixed up with all kinds of physiological jargon, biomechanical jargon, stuff that's more fitting for a physical therapist practitioner, and mixed in with behaviorist language.
Correct.
Which makes them sound really smart.
Correct.
But like, who talks that way?
Well,
who
horses
really rides that way?
No, you can't communicate with a horse that way. And I think your assessment of what their salad of content is comprised of is very accurate. And I am totally bothered by it. All that I know to do is to keep being true to what horse training is and insisting on the language of trainers so that colleagues can understand each other. And the principles.
That's just it. It's like Babel.
It is. It's like Babel. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's talking, and they're maybe using the same buzzwords, and it's like secret handshakes. Oh, now I understand what you're saying because you said the magic word. You know, you could call it soft feel, or or get to the feet, or,
Such bullshit.
all things that are good. I'm not criticizing those things in themselves, but I'm saying they may not really even know any of that. They're just following.
Yes, it's the language itself that, and I have actually in my what I share online, I have now half halted myself because I've noticed ideas and terms that I would be harping on would then start being used by the people that block me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like, I mean, they didn't take the idea forward from me, that's for sure. But people talk about forward all day long and they don't know what forward is. Because if they did, we'd see their horses being forward and we don't.
Yeah. Well, one time I just try to quote instead of it being my.
Me too. Yes.
That's another thing about, if you're going to quote Xenophon, quote Xenophon.
Yes. But that is also another way to identify a true horseman. And I think you're going to know a reference I'm about to make. A true horseman is eager to tell you the name of his teacher and tell you what his teacher told him. Think about de la Garnier. He was like, this is what the Duke of Newcastle told me, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm always, oh, the major said that. Oh, this is what he said. Oh, he said this. I heard him say this. Like, it's always what, and a horseman hears. And I think that's important. We don't say stuff. We repeat what we were taught.
Yeah. And there's also, I mean, you can be over intellectualizing things, which I've been accused of, but there's a certain scholarly aspect. There's the writing, there's the work, and I don't know if you've ever heard of right brain, left brain.
Oh, of course.
But we ride on the right side of our brain.
Mm-hmm.
We study on the left. I mean, that's the left side of, if I've got it right, the left side of our brains are analytical, thinking, scientific aspect. And I got this from a book years ago in an art class called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain.
I think I had that book. I think I remember it.
Yeah, and one of the exercises was to get you to think on the right side of your brain is if you had a picture of, let's say, a horse, and you couldn't draw, you tried to draw the horse, but your left side of your brain is trying to tell you what a horse looks like, and you're not drawing what you're seeing. So you turned the picture upside down, and you simply drew the shape that you saw in the relationships to one shape and another. And then when you turned it right side up, you had the drawing perfect. And I relate that to what we're talking about writing is faster than speech.
Yeah.
And we don't ride in this thinking, biomechanical, behaviorist. That's not when we ride. We ride on the right.
And we don't ride in imagination either. Horses are very literal. They're like little Rain Man. They're all like little autistics. You have to be exact explaining the shape, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I can't prove my theory, but I for me, but when I go back to the scholarly parts and read this stuff, then you're well informed.
Yes.
And the more read you are, the more you can see through bullshit.
Correct. I think we should end because you and I could go talking forever as usual.
Oh, yeah.
But what I think is germane to this is notice how all of the great textbook manuals of the masters, they all talk about the old dead guys at the beginning, don't they? They all do a little history recap at the beginning.
Well, yeah, there's nobody deader than Xenophon.
That we know about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
going to read something about Simon, but the to end, I guess, to keep it back to the subject, is this book, Xenophon Press, has notes in the back that are historical footnotes.
Yes.
So for the nerds keeping track, for instance, the reference to Simon, then in the notes it says Simon was an Athenian, but we do not know exactly where he lived and wrote. So it goes on to explain that Xenophon's mention of him and various theories have been propounded that he was mentioned in Aristophanes and that he was a hipparch. So you got to be
A hipparch, that is a
Greek
horseman.
scholar to really,
Yeah.
understand some of this stuff.
I think Simon was probably like a Frank Barnett.
Yeah, who unfortunately I've never met, but
You guys would hit it off big time. And he would love this conversation. I think I'll send it to him.
okay.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if we've learned anything about Xenophon, but I was just this bullet pointed recreation of Xenophon, even though I don't have a problem with most of what it says.
It's mealy mouthed.
Bugging me that this isn't. You could just tell if you've read, like what I just read is not the way he talks or any of the translations.
For me, that bullet point thing and making Xenophon into an effete urbane snob is,
yeah,
it's dishonest.
Well, yeah. I don't know. It's just a recreation of history. This happens with the vaqueros too.
I bet.
Modern
I bet.
vaquero training. I mean, they relate. Yes, these guys originally from Spain. So they probably had some classical training at some point.
Yep, I'm sure they did.
But when you read the history of the Spanish missions in California, they ran out of. At first, Indians were not permitted to ride. Then they needed more vaqueros. So they trained the Indians to ride, and the Indians are what are most of, like a lot of the photographs and stuff they're not Spanish, they're Indian.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, and with the Mexican influence, but so they got handed down some of these techniques, but to say that these guys were classically trained and act like it, and then they were stockmen for the most part.
Well,
and they were pretty handy guys, but
they can be classically trained too.
What's that?
Stockmen can be classically trained.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
All right.
Yeah, but I don't think the resources weren't there because the
yeah.
old vaqueros.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they had some horses, but I don't think they had the teachers.
And then later the horses changed because later on in California, the 1800s, when Miller and Lux, I don't know if you ever read about them, but
no, I want to.
They own the water rights and the cattle grazing rights to most of Central California.
Okay.
And the Tehachapis. And they supplied their vaqueros with standard bred.
Oh, interesting.
So you see all these upright necks in these, but if you see some of the old photographs, they're like narrow, but there's, yeah, it's very interesting. But they did keep the equipment, and so the equipment has, to this day, is very similar to what everybody rode in back in the day.
Why is there so much Clydesdale showing up in these Mustangs I see?
Oh, I know it. I know.
What happened? Like, who got loose? Weird.
Well, yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that can be a topic for another day.
Lots of topics, but yeah, the Xenophon thing, like that's why I wrote to you, because I just, and maybe I've got it wrong, and maybe this fellow.
No, you don't have it wrong.
Right, Kuntz from Dr. Phil Klaus Widra, published in 2007, which in itself makes it suspicious because some modern guy went through Xenophon and rewrote it. And isn't that the problem we have with translations of even the German stuff, right?
Yes. I think that we need to just take the translations we have, because, you know, I think Steinkraus made sure that the Steinbrecht translation was decent in English. I think we need to just stop rewriting stuff. And I just can't stand all the redrawn diagrams. I think that it's going to make me pop a vein.
Yeah.
Okay, I better go.
All right, thanks for the call.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you
called you.
soon. See you again soon here, I hope. Bye.
Okay, all right, bye.